Whether you're in corporate running your business part-time, whether you've left corporate and you're running your business full-time, whether you've never been to corporate and you just jumped right into your business from the get-go. Here's the thing. When you're a coach, a founder, a solopreneur running your business online, there's something that most people are overlooking that goes beyond business strategy. And that is your coach presence. You see, in the corporate world, when I work with clients who are leaders, founders, executives, they know that their executive presence matters. But for some reason, when we become coaches, when we run our business online, we start to think that something like executive presence, something like your coach presence, is only for the corporate world. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. You see, now more than ever, when you're running your business online, the way that you acquire clients, the way that people first come across your content, the way that people get to know you is through a little screen in a short video that they see among a sea of other videos. And so how do they get to know you? How do they start to judge whether not just the validity of your product or service, not just the validity of your content, but the validity of you? How do they tell whether your coach presence resonates with them or not? That's hard to do through a screen, and it takes longer, especially if you're someone who has a hard time showing up authentically online. And so, if this is hitting a nerve, stay tuned for the rest of the video, because today I'm going to be unpacking what coach presence is and how you can develop a magnetic coach presence for yourself so that you can actually start to run your business in a way that feels good and works. I'm Christina. I'm a social psychologist. I work with leaders, founders, coaches, solopreneurs to help them develop confidence from the inside out so that they can show up with presence, with authority, with confidence in a way that works for their personality, their lifestyle, and their goals. Let's get into it. Now, in the corporate space, there is the idea of executive presence. So let's unpack that for a moment. You see, think of top CEOs, top executives. What do you think matters about them? How they do their work? Or more so, how they show up in front of people, in front of clients, in front of stakeholders? Imagine meeting with a CEO who's running a super successful company, but the way that they carry themselves is just atrocious. What if they are slouched over with terrible posture? They're all nervous and sweaty and shaky. They're stuttering and uncertain and rambling and talking in circles. What kind of impression would you get from them? Would you think that they are the ones running this super successful company? Or would you think that there's a little more to the story and something that doesn't quite sit right with you, that there's more than meets the eye, and maybe there's some superstar VPs or executive boards that are making the decisions because the appearance of the CEO and the presence of the CEO doesn't match what you would expect? Now let's apply this to you. You know that you're good at what you do. You know that you're able to help the clients that you work with. You know that your product or your service or your transformation is incredible and it needs to reach more people. But there's a disconnect between what you know and how you're talking about it or how you're showing up about it. You see, your coach presence, especially if you want to have a magnetic coach presence, needs to be in line with who you really are, how you want to be perceived, and also what others expect from you. You see, in psychology, there's ample research to show that we make judgments about people within seconds, often within milliseconds. That means a second hasn't passed, and subconsciously, we've already been triggered to think and to make certain assumptions based on our past experiences, based on our expectations, and based on what we see, the type of reaction that it triggers in us. And we do this all the time. In life, in person, online, with people we know, with people we don't know, with people we pass on the street. It happens automatically. Back in graduate school, when I was doing research on subconscious stereotypes, there was one thing that happened consistently. People's stereotypes got activated in milliseconds. And it didn't necessarily matter which stereotypes we were looking at. Consistently, people would respond and get triggered and have certain expectations that came up that then influenced their behavior. And all of this happened within seconds. And so it's not just something that happens in the lab during experiments. It's something that happens in real life. And when you're a coach, when someone is scrolling, right? Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine from yourself, you have this experience. When you're online, you're scrolling, you're seeing a sea of information, an overload of things to pay attention to. Every single thing is now being designed and optimized to catch your attention and to hijack your dopamine system. Well, how do you stand out? And if you are playing by tactics that don't resonate with you, if you are doing things that you have resistance to, you might be doing it in a way that comes across as fake or inauthentic or something just off about it. Or most likely, you're not doing it because you're stuck in analysis paralysis and resistance and nothing is being done because it's not being done the way that you want. So subconsciously, you sabotage yourself. Is any of this ringing a bell? Don't worry, I've been there too. When I first started my coaching business, I knew that I wanted to do this. This wasn't just a project or a side thing. I went from full-time academia to full-time coaching essentially overnight. It was a big decision. And although I made the decision and I knew that I was committing to it, I still had so much fear and resistance come up, especially when it came time to post content on social media. My very first Instagram reel that I made was absolute garbage. I was wide-eyed, staring at the camera. I was being very, very careful with my words and speaking in a very unnatural pace. My lighting was terrible. The whole thing sucked. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed, but I posted it anyway. And it took time and it took reps and it took practice. But more importantly, it took time for me to get comfortable with showing up on camera as myself and as a version of myself that I wanted to portray in my business, and not just me sitting in my sweats watching TV with my kids. And so when it comes to you, there needs to be an understanding of how you want to be perceived within your business. How do you want to come across, right? Name 3 to 5 adjectives of how you want people to describe you, your business, your vibe, your personality. And then use 3 to 5 adjectives to describe how you want your business, your product, your service to be perceived. Taking the time to get clarity on this first initial step is going to help you get so much clarity in how you actually want to communicate in your business, in your content, online, so that you are doing it from a place of matching your goals and not just throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks and feeling resistance and ickiness the entire time that you're doing it. Now, the second thing that I want you to do is I want you to start asking your family, your friends, and maybe even some of your past clients to describe you in 3 to 5 words. You see, psychologically, there is always a disconnect between how we think we are and how we see ourselves versus how other people see us and how they think of us. And this is a really fantastic way to find your blind spots and to find the gaps in your communication and your presence. Because if you describe yourself as wanting to come across as, let's say, grounded, calm, educational, relatable, but your friends, family, and past clients are describing you as maybe introverted or reserved or maybe chaotic or maybe way too bubbly and out there, if there's a mismatch between what you are aiming for and how you're being perceived, then you need to address that. Otherwise, the gap is going to continue. The mismatch is going to continue. And the longer that it goes on, the more resistance and cognitive dissonance you will feel between how you'd like to show up in your business and how you're actually showing up in your business. And when there's that cognitive dissonance, when there's a disconnect between what you think and how you're actually doing it, well, that leads to resistance. That leads to procrastination. That leads to losing motivation. All of that leads to not doing the things that you need to do for your business to run effectively. So do yourself a favor. To recap, number 1, get clarity, 3 to 5 adjectives of how you want your communication style to be in your business. Number 2, 3 to 5 adjectives, get clarity on how you want your business, your product, your service to be perceived. Number 3, ask friends, family, and past clients to describe you in 3 to 5 adjectives so that you can get a true sense of what your true north is, what you're aiming for, and where you currently are on the map. Think of this as your GPS to start to develop your magnetic coach presence. You can't get to where you want to be if you don't know where you're going, and you can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting from. So 3 steps to get you there. Awesome. Now, let's unpack what magnetic coach presence really is. So we've talked about executive presence, right? It's the way that you would expect CEOs, executives, top leaders to show up beyond just the scope of their work. And the exact same thing applies to you, the way that you show up, and the way that you run your business. Now, I've broken executive presence down into 4 key pillars that I teach my corporate clients. But here's the catch. The exact same 4 pillars apply to your coach presence. The principles are the same. The philosophy is the same. The inner work is the same. It's just the vocabulary that changes. Now, check this out. If you want to develop magnetic coach presence, here are the 4 pillars I recommend you work on. Your presence, your communication skills, your relationships, especially with the one-on-one clients that you work with, and your appearance. Each one of those matters. Each one of them creates the package of who you are, how you're perceived, and how you show up. When you get the package right, when you fine-tune the details of each pillar in a way that becomes aligned and authentic to who you are and how you want to be perceived, honestly, magic happens. And that's when the magnetism is really activated. And then if you're relying on short 60-second videos or long-form content of, under an hour, people get to know you for you, and they start to resonate with you, your content, your product or service on a much, much deeper level. And that is worth investing into. Now, let's go through each one. I'm going to unpack a little bit more about what it is, and then give you a few tips on how you can start to work on creating that for yourself. Now, here's the important thing. Please do not work on each pillar at the exact same time. It is too much. You will overload your system. You will overwhelm your mind, and then you won't see the type of progress that you actually want to see. When you start working on your magnetic coach presence, pick one thing to start with, one pillar to focus on, and work on that until it feels comfortable before you move on to any of the others. Okay? Let's start with presence. Now, presence is quite literally what it sounds like. It's your presence. It's the way that you show up. It's the energy that you're in when you're working with your clients, working on your products, or delivering your services. Imagine you were my client and we were meeting one-on-one, but every single time we met, I was distracted. Maybe it looked like I was scrolling on my computer. My thoughts were scattered. I was disorganized. Even if I was giving you really good information, what impression would you get of me? Would you want to continue working with me past the initial contract? Or would you get a little uncertainty or a little ickiness that I'm not maybe taking this as seriously as you would have liked? Now compare that to if we were working together and every single meeting you had my full attention. I was extremely invested in you, doing the best active listening you've ever had, asking you questions that are really getting you to reflect, and giving you information tailored exactly to your situation. I was showing up listening, I was showing up engaging, and I was showing up with energy to give to you. But the information stayed the exact same in both. Which one would you prefer? Of course, all of us would prefer number 2, because your presence matters to people more than your information does. I'll say that again. Your presence matters to people more than your information does. Now, think back to the last time you wanted to have a conversation with your friend, your family, your partner, and they were staring at their phone saying, yeah, They were not very present. And how did that make you feel? Not very important, not very good, and quite frankly, like you just don't want to continue the conversation with them anyway, right? Their loss. And so your presence matters. Your presence is the way that you're showing up and the intention that you're giving your clients, your services, the products that you're making. Okay. So when you want to start working on your presence, the very first thing that I would recommend is that you work on your active listening skills. You see, I have a whole masterclass that I've done on active listening. And I have a whole philosophy why the entire reason it sucks for people to try to learn active listening and why it feels so hard is because you have too much mental baggage in the way. So I'll link that in the description and I'll put it up at the end and you can go check that out if you're interested. But when you're working on your presence, start by working on your active listening skills. Because most of us, when we come to a conversation, right, when we're in a conversation with someone else, we often want to be heard or we want to be helped. And if someone just wants to be heard, if they just want to vent, if they just want a safe space to talk, especially if you're in the coaching space, you need to be able to hold space for someone else to let them say their piece without interrupting, without interjecting, without trying to give a solution to every single thing that comes up. You see, I made this mistake as well. When I first started coaching some of my very first clients, I felt like it was my responsibility to give them massive transformation every single session. And so, with good intentions, I would constantly interrupt and give them so many different things that I thought would be helpful. And as you can imagine, it just left them feeling overwhelmed. It left them feeling like there was too much and there was no clear direction, and 20 solutions that are half baked are, quite frankly, not really good solutions at all. So, start by learning your active listening skills so that you can hold space, so that you can sit in silence and let them think, ponder, and then you can ask questions with your full attention without interrupting and without feeling like you have to give advice at every turn. The next pillar is communication. Now, communication is so important because we are judged based on our ability to communicate. Whether you are able to articulate your thoughts clearly or not gives your clients and your potential clients a very strong indication of what it's like working with you and honestly, whether or not you're effective at what you do. If you are someone who tends to ramble, if you are someone who tends to use a lot of filler words, if you just have a fear of saying the wrong thing and so you watch your words very carefully and you don't say things the way that you would really like to say them, your message gets diluted, your message gets lost, and you don't make as strong of an impression as you could. Now put yourself on the other side of that. Imagine you went to the doctor's office. Maybe you had chronic fatigue, maybe you had something aching, you just have something going on with you that's wonky. You just want some help and guidance. You go to your doctor, and your doctor spends 20 minutes talking in circles about the benefits of blood tests and the importance of lifestyle choices and healthy eating and managing stress levels and how it's all interconnected. And they just rambled and talked in circles, and you zoned out and lost track of what they were saying. And then they thanked you and left, and you had no idea what the point of the appointment was. You have no idea what's wrong with you. You have no idea what the next steps are. You just know that eating is important. What does that get you? Would you go look for a new family doctor? Odds are yes. And the exact same thing happens in the coaching space. When you are working with someone, when you're working on your products, you want to be able to communicate your ideas effectively, clearly, and in a way that's understood. You know what you know, but you forget that other people don't know it as well as you do. And so you need to be able to say things clearly, directly, and articulately for them to understand without diluting your message, without being scared to say what you'd really like to, without worrying about hurting their feelings because the way you say it is just a little bit too rigid or direct, without using filler words, without rambling and talking in circles. Get to the point, say it well, and say it clearly. When you're first working on your communication skills, if this is the pillar you'd like to work on improving, my recommendation is you start with a personal audit. This is one of my favorite things to do with clients because you get so many breakthroughs of like, I didn't know this is what I really sound like. And at first it's intimidating, but it's extremely effective in getting you results. If you're someone who's already trying to or successfully recording content, then you're a little bit more familiar with this process. But what you want to do is you want to go ahead, set up your phone. You can either do a video recording or just audio and talk for 2 to 3 minutes without taking a break, the exact same way you would with a client. Maybe you think of a common question that you get asked. Maybe you think of a specific situation and you work through it out loud, right? Pick something that resonates, talk for 2 to 3 minutes, and then listen back to it so that you actually hear what you sound like. Because most of us, even if you have client calls that you record, how often are you going through and actually listening to it? And I know if you're recording videos for your content, for your business, it's a whole other can of worms, because a lot of people feel anxiety around recording that brings out a side of them that's not quite natural, and it dilutes the way that you speak on its own. So forget that for a moment. Bust out your phone, record yourself for 2 to 3 minutes, and listen back to it. How many filler words are you using? How long do you take to get to your point? How often do you have a train of thought that you're just about to conclude when you completely redirect and think of something else and jump on it, and it sounds like you're just dodging ideas left and right, right? Then, if you want to be an A+ student, go ahead, transcribe that and read it. And when you're reading it, you're going to visually see the filler words that pop out at you, the slang that you might be using, any sort of redirection in your train of thought, any incomplete thoughts that you're having. This is an extremely effective way to start to gauge the way that you're actually communicating on a day-to-day basis with your clients without you realizing that this is what you've been doing. And when you become aware of what you're doing, like if you're using too many filler words, that's when you can begin to change it. But if you don't realize how often you're losing your train of thought, if you don't realize how often you're ums in the middle of your sentence, you can't change that because you just don't even know it exists. Okay, moving on to pillar 3, relationships. Now, this is a really, really interesting one, because when you're working with clients, depending on whether you're doing group coaching or one-on-one coaching, each relationship ends up being a little bit different. And the way that you show up matters. Every relationship is a two-way street. Same goes for group coaching, same goes for one-on-one coaching, same goes for like small mastermind kind of vibes. Because you are the one running your business, because you're the one coaching, you need to come from a place of authority. You need to come from a place of leadership. You need to come from a place of leading the conversation, the interaction, the relationship, without forgetting that it's a two-way street. And the way that you communicate, the way that you show up, the types of questions that you ask, the information that you present, it all influences the way that the client responds. In addition to that, there will be challenging moments. There will be emotional questions, emotional reactions. There may be stress, resistance, overwhelm. There might be tears. And you need to be equipped to handle that accordingly. And so if your client is getting overwhelmed or agitated or rejecting something that you're saying because they're not ready to hear it, if you are coming from a place of being dysregulated yourself, if you're coming from a place of being triggered, if you're feeling insecure about whether or not you're worthy of having coaching clients, and there's a client in front of you rejecting what you're saying, you will get triggered. And the way that you respond will shape the nature of that relationship moving forward. And so when it comes to relationships, when it comes to group coaching, when it comes to any sort of interactions you're having, you need to understand it's a two-way street, and you need to be intentional about the way that you show up, because your behaviors influence them, especially in a coaching setting when you are seen as the authority, as in the leader. And so you need to be regulated. You need to have emotional regulation strategies in your back pocket. You need to be doing the work to work on your confidence, your presence, your body language, your communication skills, your intellect, your credibility, your expertise. That all matters in how you show up in relationships. Now, it's a little bit different if you're a founder, if you're a leader, if you're running, maybe you have a coaching business and you have a few coaches working under you. Then it starts to get a little bit more intricate with how you show up in your relationships to manage the day-to-day dynamics of your team. Because every individual on your team will have their own personality, their own preferences, their own style. And so you need to understand the dynamics at play. Like, even if you're running a mastermind and there's multiple people in there, you need to have an awareness of the different personality dynamics at play to be able to mitigate them and adjust accordingly for the success of the greater group and yourself. And so if you're starting to work on your relationships pillar, my recommendation for you is to start by auditing your emotional regulation strategies. And what this means is, think back to the last time you had to give someone difficult feedback, or you had a little bit of an intense conversation, or something you said made someone angry. How did you respond? How often are you feeling anxious to say something? How often are you getting mad? How often are you blowing up at people, right? Are you a hothead? Do you retreat? Like, audit how you are showing up in your relationships and whether you're able to cope with the emotional reactions that you're having in the moment. Now, you see, the trick is not necessarily not to blow up. It's not about not having an emotional reaction. It's about learning how to mitigate them, get them under control before they escalate, and get yourself back to a place of calm, grounded regulation before it gets out of hand or in shorter amounts of time. So, for example, if you are getting into an argument with your partner, how long does it take you before you feel calm and regulated and like you're able to have a normal conversation? Is it weeks? Is it days? Is it hours? Is it minutes? Is it moments? Wherever you're starting from is totally okay, because again, most of us aren't even aware of what is happening. And until you become aware of what you are doing, you won't be able to change it. Okay? So start by working on your emotional regulation toolkit. Think about, audit, how are you reacting, and just get a sense of where you're starting from so that you can start to take less time to get re-regulated in the moment. Because if you're working with someone who is triggered or upset, you want to be able to stay calm, to hold space for the both of you. And that will completely change the nature of the conversations that you're having. And when you're a coach working with difficult or sensitive subjects, this will change the nature of your business and will help you elevate yourself as a coach. Now, the last pillar that we're going to talk about is your appearance. Now, without sounding superficial, your appearance matters. There's ample research to show that, again, we make judgments within seconds, including based on someone's appearance. How you look, how you show up, how you are coming across based on your appearance, including your body language, matters. Even though you may wish it didn't, even though you may prefer it didn't, there is enough research to show that it does. And so rather than burying your head in the sand, rather than hoping in the types of clients that come to you won't care about appearance, optimize it and use it to your advantage. So if you're not ready to talk about appearance in terms of what you actually look like, how you are dressed, whether or not you're put together by whatever standards you have, put that to the side for now. That's okay. We'll move on. But your body language is a massive part of your appearance. And your body language matters because it is how people gauge whether or not you're serious, whether or not you're credible, whether or not you're engaged and present, and whether or not you're credible and trustworthy. So, for example, if I was recording videos and the entire time I was slouched over like this, with maybe like terrible posture, or if I was on client calls the entire time in gremlin mode, that would give a very, very different impression than if I was put together, good posture, attentive, good eye contact, right? It's the little things that become the big things. And so if you're working on your appearance pillar, start by auditing two things. Audit your body language, but more importantly, audit the way that your body language is coming across when you're speaking to others. So most of us are working virtually, globally, online, and so we're using our laptops, our cameras, webcams, etc. They don't capture you the same way you think of yourself. So even if I'm sitting straight and I have amazing posture, if my webcam or my laptop camera is at a very bad angle, you will get a very different perception of me and my body language just based on the fact that my camera is not optimized. And so you need to understand that your body language matters. And while you work on sitting straight, having good posture, being aware of your facial expressions, all the good body language stuff, make sure that your laptop, your camera, your angles are seeing you from the waist up, at least arm distance away from you, and eye level, so that when the person on the other side of the screen is looking at you, they are looking at you and not an up the nose or down the face kind of angle that makes you seem less credible and less aware. Okay? Just to recap, Your magnetic coach presence matters because it gives people a clear indication of who you are, how you run your business, and how you show up, and whether or not you're credible at what you do. Even though you have the information and you have the expertise and you believe in yourself and your product, it's unfortunately not enough to come across to clients and prospective clients. And so you need to work on getting your magnetic coach presence in alignment based on your presence, your communication skills, your relationships, and your appearance, the PCRA framework that I've come up with. If this is something that you know you need some support with, I encourage you to check out Club Coherence. It's a community I've created especially for this purpose, to help coaches, founders, solopreneurs, leaders figure out how to develop their executive presence or their magnetic coach presence in a way that works based on your preferences, your personality, and your lifestyle constraints. I already have an entire masterclass in there around your presence, your executive presence, your coach presence, whichever term you resonate with, that deep dives into each pillar, the do's and don'ts of each, as well as a series of tools that you can add to your toolkit so that regardless of which pillar you're starting with, you have tangible steps to take to work on improving it. Because you know the way that you show up in your business matters. And if you've been feeling resistance, if you've been feeling like it's hard to record videos, to make content, to show up online because it doesn't feel like you, or you don't feel comfortable the way that you are showing up, it's because there's a disconnect. And that's okay. You just need the right strategies, baby steps, and techniques to merge the gap and to get you from where you are to where you want to be in the way that you would prefer, right? So as a social and personality psychologist, I studied both social relationships, social dynamics, and the way that our personality affects our behaviors and the way that we show up. And so I'm a big believer that there are no one-size-fits-all techniques. I don't believe in cookie-cutter tips or frameworks. Everything should be customized to you, your preferences, your lifestyle, your constraints, and more importantly, your starting point. Because if this is your first time being introduced to the concept of presence or active listening or the impact of relationships, you can't expect yourself to be in the exact same place as someone who's been working on it or studying it for years. So give yourself grace, give yourself space. And the fact that you're developing this awareness is already super awesome. And I applaud you for it. Honestly, it's exciting. I know it can be really intimidating to start a new journey. I know it can be extremely intimidating to look in the mirror and say, there's so much to work on. And again, I've been there. But the fact that you realize there's something to work on means you're already so much further along than you were. And now that you know, you're going to work on it and you're going to ace it and you're going to do amazing and everything's going to work out for your greater good. So go ahead, check out Club Coherence. There's already a bunch of resources in there. There's a whole leadership communication class so that you can work on your communication skills. There's an entire workshop dedicated to helping you unpack executive or coach presence so that you can work on that step by step by step. I hope you found this helpful. When you are working on your presence, your communication, your relationships, and your appearance, again, pick one to start with. Figuring out all of it at once, trying to work on your body language, your appearance, your communication skills, the way that you show up, being authentic, it's too much. You'll crash and burn a lot faster than if you were to just pick one pillar, one technique, and baby step your way out of your comfort zone towards success. I wish you all the best with it. Comment down below. Let me know which pillar you are committing to working on for 1 week, starting from today. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.